dreamed last night of fellows fallen, those I nodded to in passing, and those I called friends, of tents and bags to sleep in, of clothes in zippered packs, jammed to bursting, of bikes with lights, no brakes, or skateboards and scooters, of paper bag lunches I never ate, gave away to ease the hunger. I dreamed of Sarge and Red Ryder, of Max and Dancing Robert, and Robert and Buddy. Many more whose names I can't recall. I dreamed of the smile in their eyes and the kindness they tried to hide. I dreamed of cold, stinging rain and a blazing sun that could melt my shoes. Wind that whips and rips through my soul. The cold, cloudless night can bring. Before awakening, I found myself at a table feast with a warm, glowing fire. The smiling eyes of fallen friends, welcoming me with a kindness they couldn't hide. I felt homeless.
Hello, I'm Tim Houchin. I'm the Executive Director of Hope for Restoration and your host for this fourth episode of our special series in recognition of National Homeless Persons Memorial Day, held each year on December 21st. The Longest Night has been our traditional and ceremonial event in honor of this day since 2014. This year's event will be a virtual presentation and will take place during live broadcasts on YouTube and Facebook on December 21st, beginning at 7 p.m. This virtual presentation of The Longest Night is only possible through our partnership with the Women Drivers Interfaith Group of Orange County. This episode, along with others in our series, will broadcast on December 21st, beginning at 1 p.m. on Facebook Live, and will run until the main presentation of The Longest Night at 7 p.m. In 2020, a record number of homeless deaths have been documented in jurisdictions across the state of California. In Orange County, more than 300 homeless deaths were recorded during the year, more than any previous year. It is our intention to raise a greater level of community awareness to this increase in homeless deaths. In this number 4 episode, we will talk with special guest, 65th District California Assemblywoman Sharon Quirk-Silva. She will provide insight regarding Project Roomkey, Project Homekey, Sacramento politics, COVID-19, and how they all work together or not. We will also feature musical guest Julie Winn, who works with homeless persons in Vermont when she's not recording music. Julie will tell us the story behind her musical presentation of Stone Pillows. Thank you for watching. We will now begin programming with our interview of 65th District California Assemblywoman Sharon Quirk-Silva. Today I'm with 65th District Assemblywoman Sharon Quirk-Silva. Sharon has long been a champion for issues regarding homelessness and affordable housing in the California State Legislature and a passionate representative for marginalized populations locally. Please welcome Assemblywoman Sharon Quirk-Silva. Would you please introduce yourself and tell my guests a little bit about what you do?
Hello, everybody. I'm Assemblymember Sharon Quirk-Silva, and I represent the 65th District, which includes the cities of Fullerton, Buena Park, West Anaheim, Cypress, La Palma, and Stanton. And I am now entering into my 4th term. Very excited by that. And as a local council member and as a sibling of a family of 10, and now as a state assembly woman, housing and homelessness has been at the top of my list, not only because of personal reasons, but also because of the sheer need. You don't have to go very far in my district or Orange County, or really across the state, across the United States, to understand people are suffering out on our streets.
As we prepare to recognize National Homeless Persons Memorial Day coming up on December 21st, one thing on the minds of many people is the record numbers of homeless deaths that we are seeing, not just in Orange County, but also in other jurisdictions across the state. For instance, we have recorded more than 300 homeless deaths for 2020, and the year is not even over yet. Are you aware of any explanation for the dramatic rise in homeless deaths in 2020?
Well, related to the deaths on the streets of Orange County, first, it is a crime. It's just absolutely a crime that with our great state of California, and with us being the golden state, that we can simply allow this to happen. And this is even before the pandemic. Now, the pandemic has made everything much more devastating, and my huge fear is it will be even more devastating in the year to come with looming evictions. But just that we can quietly not notice between 20 to 30 to 40 people dying on the streets of Orange County a month. But I will say that Judge David Carter, without his influence and without his focus on this area, we would have many more who've died on the streets, because everything from sanitation to spread of virus, now COVID, but other infectious diseases, by him forcing cities to at least do what should be the responsibility without being forced, that has made an impact, particularly in northern Orange County. Now, that being said, it is not perfect by any means. We know that there have been beds that have been made available. We know that some of these operations went up very swiftly within 3 to 6 months. And we also know there's issues. We know that there's issues, whether it be with food, whether it be with sanitation issues, and even more, as a recent lawsuit has just been filed. That being said, one of the questions to ask, and I think we grapple with this every single day, which is, how do you go about housing hundreds and even thousands of homeless people, not only in Orange County, but throughout the state, with diminished funds? Of course, we see in the COVID and pandemic budgets that are being slashed all across local government, county government, and state. How do you go about, if you want to say, encouraging individuals to go into some type of transition shelter housing if they refuse to? Those are important questions. And we know that permanent supportive housing, which could be as small units that are single room occupancy, to other types of innovative housing. We haven't even gotten to the point where now, when people are housed in shelters, now we have the next part of that equation, which is, once they have seemed to be ready to move on, there is a place to move them to. So although we've made progress in the shelter, we still have a lot of work to do with permanent supportive housing, and we have a lot of work to do with the current shelters, making sure the conditions are not only appropriate, but where people want to remain there and get the help that is associated with shelters, whether it be some type of stabilization. And if we have outbreaks with, whether it be viruses or bed bugs or conditions that the homeless community feels that are not appropriate, they simply won't stay. So we've made progress, but we have a lot more progress to make.
Let's talk a little about Project Roomkey. After taking some of the most vulnerable homeless persons off the streets and putting them into motels to protect them from the virus, we are now seeing Project Roomkey programs shutting down, and while we're nearing the peak of the pandemic. How does this make sense?
I think, well, I wouldn't say I think, I know for sure that the entire rollout of pandemic support, whether it be PPE related to COVID testing, related to all of the things you need for protective equipment, in addition to the Project Roomkey, has not been a perfect rollout. I think that, like many others, when the numbers kind of went up in the spring and then we saw a decline in the summer, I think many started to feel much more comfortable, including state officials, where funding was coming from. And once those numbers started to decline, there was a pullback in order to start to release people from those Project Roomkey, not, I think, ever expecting the numbers to get where we are now. This, of course, has been a huge fiasco in the sense of now the numbers are even much more dramatic than we ever expected. And we've released people. And now are we going to have the opportunity to get back the funding, because it's a funding question, and get people back into a safe place? That remains to be seen. I know that we are fighting on all fronts to make sure that Orange County gets their fair share of not only homeless dollars, but production dollars to build transitional shelters. But we are a large county. And again, we need to be equivalent to what other counties our size are. And that is sometimes where there can be a disconnect. The Orange County delegation, along with the Orange County supervisors, must speak up and must speak in unison. I guess if you were going to have a focused conversation, it would be as, how does Orange County get their fair share? We can say we don't get our fair share, but if you don't compete for your fair share, that means individual cities, it means the county, and it means all nonprofits related to housing actually sending in applications for funding to the state. And because of the access we've created, in order to make sure that the question isn't, are we getting our fair share? It's like, do not ask that question unless you've applied. So I can confidently say that we have had a much more robust application process, and we are starting to see those funds come down from the state to the county or to individual cities where we hadn't seen that before. And we also have another big step, and that is for the Orange County delegation, meaning Republican and Democrats, to be speaking the same language to the state, which is, yes, we have a homeless problem. Yes, we have hundreds dying in our county. And yes, we want to partner with you and do everything we can. One of the big issues we see is elected officials, supervisors, our sheriff, who will say, well, we're not going to enforce it, or, well, we're going to open, or the state's protocols are ridiculous, or, this is bad for business. Of course, we might not agree with all those things, but with these numbers rising as they are, just to say it's okay to open your patios, you've done all you can, is not okay. And the message then that we send to the state is, too bad, we're going to do what we want. But by the way, please send us as much support as you can. See, it doesn't go both ways. And so how does this relate to housing and state funding? The way it relates is we can't be speaking out of both sides of our mouth, which is, everybody should be allowed to open. A face mask is up to you personally, and then see the numbers rise and say, sorry, we're not going to comply. But by the way, we need more Project Roomkey dollars. By the way, we need more money for any type of housing. It doesn't go that way. You have to work together as partners to solve these critical issues.
Project Homekey combines federal CARES Act funding and state funds to provide grants to cities and counties who can then apply for funding to buy motels to be converted into permanent supportive housing units. Orange County has purchased 2 properties that will provide about 170 units, and that's still well below the number of units that the county would need to meet the immediate needs for housing the homeless here. How will the state encourage more housing production in places like Orange County?
Well, there's going to be several housing production bills that will move forward, and that will be not only for the most affordable housing, but also market rate, because we know that as there is a competition for housing, the prices remain extremely high, even in the pandemic, for market rate. So certainly building as a whole is very, very important. The county looking at leasing and then eventually converting motels, hotels into permanent supportive housing is an excellent step. But again, now we are in a little bit of a standstill, because some of those legislation that would have made that type of building streamlined and made it quicker to move through got held up. And this is now at the state because of issues with labor and issues with them getting out of not at the committees or the floor, but getting hung up in appropriations. So we still have work to do as a state to say we need to be able to not only move these bills forward, but give a reprieve to local governments. Because again, if you're watching local government, you will find that it's the local electeds on councils that many times are face to face with a denser project, whether it be affordable housing or mixed use. And you get NIMBYs, yes, NIMBYs, not in my backyard, saying, we don't want this. This is not acceptable in our neighborhood. And many times those projects don't move forward. We've seen that in Anaheim. We've seen it in Fullerton. We've seen it in many cities where people, even though they know there's homeless, they know their young millennial adult children are moving away out of California because of the affordability, they still do not want what they would say is dense, doesn't fit into the neighborhood, these type of projects. So certainly Project Roomkey, there's a state funding mechanism, but there's also a county funding mechanism. And then you have labor agreements. And can we get these built at a price that's affordable? And with the nonprofit housing developers, which there are many great ones in Orange County, the formula has to work. So we have work to do there. Another area of housing that has had some glimmer, and yet we still have work to make it even a better possibility, are ADUs, accessory dwelling units, or a long way of saying that is granny units. The state has been very progressive in saying, hey, these can be part of the solution, yet we still have local cities in Orange County that, even though the state is encouraging that, they're adding their own ordinances on top of what the state is that still slow the production. So whether it be permit fees, whether it be all types of additional requirements cities might make, there are more permits being pulled right now, but not even close to what the capacity is. And that is, again, everything from how do you finance an ADU? Usually it's a single family homeowner. They'd have to take out a second on their home. Do they really want to do that? So we're looking at some legislation to possibly give incentives for that. We're looking at legislation that can give more flexibility for ADUs, knowing that that, again, could be another part of adding housing to what can be very dense areas.
Please give us some final words or perhaps some recommendations on what we can do to better address homelessness, particularly in the COVID era.
I think one of the things that we have to compel people to do when talking about homeless is to really see the people who are homeless and not lump them into a category of they're mentally ill or they're drug users or they don't want to work, and really try to understand that there's stories behind the faces, and that we cannot ever be the great society we want. And I will never feel that our work is done until we have made a dent in trying to deal with this. I guess on the lowest level is if you just think right now of COVID-19 and everything is closed from fast food restaurants to hotel lobbies, and then think about homeless people, and it's a really basic thing, but where do they use the restroom? Where do they wash their hands? And I think some of the most inhumane conditions we have now on our streets in Orange County, and sometimes it literally you have to take it down to that level for people to understand what's happening, and try to imagine what it would be like for you as a homeless person, to even the simplest thing as using a bathroom facility. There's nowhere to go. And if we can't solve something like, can we get porta potties or hand washing stations in places we know homeless are, then that's about as basic as you can get. How then do we want to solve big issues? So let's do some basic things for the moment, and then we have to continue working on the long-term plan. But I'm committed, and I thank you for all your work, because I know it's not just you, but there's a lot of warriors out there doing the good work every day, and I want to thank you and all of your team.
Thank you very much for all your work, and I really appreciate your time today. We've been speaking with Assemblywoman Sharon Quirk-Silva from the 65th District, California State Assembly. All right, coming up next will be our musical presentation for this episode. Julie Winn works with persons experiencing homelessness in Vermont, and she's not busy when she's not busy in the recording studio. Her song, Stone Pillows, was written by a former client she worked with, and Julie put the words from the man's poem into music. We'll listen to that very talented Julie Winn and her music, Stone Pillows, right after this message.
Hi, my name is Julie Winn, and I'm a singer-songwriter and work in the nonprofit world up here in Burlington, Vermont. And I just wanted to share a little bit about the backstory to the song Stone Pillows, which is a song on my album, Music Saves the Soul. The lyrics for the song were written by a man named Billy Pitts, who is someone that I met while I worked at our local shelter here in Vermont, the Committee on Temporary Shelter. And I worked with Billy for several years, helping him to access various resources in our community, mental health services and substance abuse services, and helped him navigate moving from living outdoors to living in the shelter to a transitional housing program and eventually a permanent housing situation. Billy and I really bonded over music. He knew that I played music, and he played guitar and some other instruments as well. And he shared this poem called Stone Pillows with me about his life living on the streets, being chronically homeless. And he asked me to help him turn it into a song and write music for it. Billy was a very bright, happy spirit here in our community in Burlington, and everybody knew him, including folks at City Hall and the mayor of Burlington. He got into community service and started organizing music for our local farmers market, and just was a really active member here in Vermont. Unfortunately, a couple weeks after he shared his poem Stone Pillows with me, he suddenly passed away. A couple years after I left the shelter and after Billy passed away, I was finally able to write music to Stone Pillows and recorded it on my album, Music Saves the Soul. So it's a song that's very near and dear to my heart, and although Billy never heard the song completed, I know that he would like it and that he would appreciate spreading the message of raising awareness about homelessness. And here is me and Billy, and that is a picture from the farmers market and we were watching some of the live music that he helped to organize. So thank you, and thank you, Billy.
Left alone in
Oh, all right. That's it for this episode, number 4 in our series in honor of National Homeless Persons Memorial Day, coming up on December 21st. We would like to thank special guest Assemblywoman Sharon Quirk-Silva for her words, and thanks to our musical guest Julie Winn. Now, don't forget our virtual presentation of The Longest Night, which will premiere at 7 p.m. on December 21st. Please remember that this and other episodes in our series will broadcast again on December 21st, beginning at 1 p.m., and will continue up until The Longest Night main event at 7. Now, for more information on how to view this and other episodes in our series, visit www.facebook.com/Hope for Restoration. And please don't forget there's a number 4 between hope and restoration, the number 4. Okay, we will see you during our next broadcast. Thank you again for watching. Bye now.